They were built to last, cities of steel, concrete, and confidence. But what if the ground itself has begun to betray that promise? Across America's two coasts of power, New York and Florida, the earth is splitting open. Over 3,000 sinkholes have already swallowed streets, homes, and neighborhoods, while officials call them isolated incidents. Yet how can thousands of holes be a coincidence? How can the richest nation on earth keep losing its footing, literally? Each collapse tells the same buried story. Water systems, tunnels, and drainage plans designed to control nature have instead provoked it. Beneath the skyline and suburbs, the foundations of modern America are dissolving. One crack, one policy, $1 at a time. This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Let's discover this tragedy together, because this isn't just about holes in the ground. It's about trust. The trust we placed in a government that swore the earth beneath us was solid. Now that very promise is caving in. Fragile earth beneath us. Some say the ground beneath us is solid, dependable, unchanging, the one thing we can trust. But Florida and New York are proving that's a dangerous illusion. Beneath their streets, golf courses, and pastel suburbs lies a fragile skeleton of stone, riddled with holes like an aging smile. The enemy isn't an earthquake or a storm, it's the ground itself, quietly vanishing from under our feet. This is karst country, a place where limestone, the very bone of the earth, dissolves like sugar under running water. Over decades, underground rivers carve out secret cathedrals of emptiness, their ceilings so thin that even the weight of a passing truck or one torrential storm can make them collapse. Roads open like trapdoors. Bedrooms sink overnight. Pools of turquoise turn into yawning black pits. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Florida is practically floating on a sponge. The Floridan Aquifer, one of the largest in the world, is both a blessing and a ticking time bomb. Water moves through it like veins, slowly erasing the limestone that props up homes, highways, and entire towns. New York, too, hides more than 5,000 closed depressions, early warnings of collapse. The more we build, the more fragile the surface becomes. What Mother Nature spent millennia sculpting, bureaucracy and greed can undo in a single generation. Vanishing numbers beneath us. Florida has become America's unofficial capital of collapse. The U.S. Geological Survey reports that during the infamous 2010 freeze event in Dover, over 110 sinkholes ripped open in a single season, all because farmers, desperate to save their crops, pumped thousands of gallons of groundwater overnight. The water table dropped like a trapdoor, and the earth followed. It wasn't a natural disaster, it was a man-made chain reaction, cause and effect, as clear as a cracked driveway. The USGS's report, Sinkholes, West Central Florida, makes an unnerving point. Sinkholes aren't just nature's doing anymore. They're being triggered by human hands, by overpumping aquifers, mismanaging stormwater, and paving every inch of sponge-like soil. Florida's Department of Environmental Protection now tracks subsidence incidents across the state, from collapsed roadways to half-swallowed homes. Not all are true karst sinkholes, but they paint a pattern, a slow-motion breakdown of the ground we trust most. Even New York, long thought geologically stable, hides 5023 closed depressions, quiet hollows that collect water and wait their turn. Satellite data show the city is sinking 1 to 2 millimeters per year under its own weight. On Long Island, researchers found that fluctuating groundwater levels perfectly mirror the rise of sinkholes. The map is changing, and it's humanity holding the pen. When cities pull the plug. Every sidewalk, rooftop, and parking lot we pour turns the earth a little less breathable. In cities like Tampa, Miami, and New York, the soil has lost its natural rhythm. Rain no longer sinks gently into the ground, but races off like a panicked crowd, overwhelming drainage systems designed for a calmer climate. When those aging pipes crack under pressure, the leaking water seeps into the soil, washing away the fine grains that hold everything together. What begins as a drip beneath the pavement can end as a crater big enough to swallow a car. In Florida, decades of overpumping groundwater for crops and drinking water have left the land hollowed out like Swiss cheese. During the 2010 freeze, frantic farmers drew so much from the aquifer to protect their strawberries that more than 110 sinkholes erupted overnight. Earlier USGS studies near Tampa found those regions densely pitted with natural sinkholes and sinkhole lakes. Proof that the warning signs were always there. New York, though colder and older, faces a similar fate. Skyscrapers, subways, and stormwater have all outgrown the sewers built generations ago. The city's veins are rusting. When budgets shrink and maintenance waits for next year, nature doesn't forgive, it retaliates, one sinkhole at a time. The cracks we see on the surface are only the prelude. Beneath the lawns, highways, and high-rises of Florida and New York, something deeper has already begun to shift. A silent chain reaction set in motion by decades of drilling, draining, and denial. The geology is no longer sleeping, it's responding. What looks like bad luck or coincidence is, in truth, a system collapsing from the inside out. To understand how entire neighborhoods can vanish overnight, we must journey below the pavement into the anatomy of a collapse. Anatomy of a collapse. Every sinkhole begins as a secret, a slow, invisible betrayal written into the bedrock. Beneath our feet, groundwater quietly eats away at carbonate rocks like limestone and dolomite, seeping through fractures and widening them grain by grain. Over decades, this dissolution carves out empty chambers beneath the surface, leaving the upper layers, soil, sand, clay, suspended like a rug over a hollow floor. When those materials start to suffuse downward, the void widens in silence, sometimes for years, until gravity finally calls the bluff. The ground doesn't simply give way, it confesses. But collapse rarely comes from nature alone. It's a duet between geology and human impatience. Groundwater fluctuations, drained by overpumping or recharged too fast by storms, act like hydraulic shocks on the fragile underground network. During drought, aquifers lose their buoyant pressure. During floods, rushing water scours and fractures the limestone. Add the chaos of human engineering, leaking pipes, broken sewers, rerouted drainage, subway tunnels, or new foundations, and you've built a perfect storm beneath your city. The U.S. Geological Survey has long warned that diversions of surface water and artificial impoundments, such as dams or retention ponds, are some of the most common man-made triggers for sinkhole outbreaks. Once the ceiling of a cavity thins, the feedback loop begins. A small depression ruptures a pipe. The pipe leak accelerates dissolution. More soil washes away. The depression deepens. Each storm pours more water into the wound. Sidewalks buckle, roads split, and underground utilities tear like old stitches. In New York, sinkhole-like depressions often appear after water main breaks wash out the surrounding soil. Florida's suburbs face the same fate, but faster as their porous limestone turns spongy and unpredictable. Nationwide, the U.S. Geological Survey estimates annual sinkhole damage exceeding $300 million, and that's only the reported cases. The truth is, America thought it could manage its water and its cities without consequence. But every leak, every pump, every patch of pavement has been an applied stress, and the earth, at last, is answering back. Now that we've traced the anatomy of how the ground gives way, the chemistry, the pressure, the chain of small failures that end in collapse, it's time to ask the harder question: who set the stage for this disaster? Sinkholes are not just born from nature, they are engineered through policies, blueprints, and decisions signed in boardrooms. From Florida's reckless water diversions to New York's decaying tunnels and neglected drains, every crater has a parent. What comes next is not geology, it's governance, and the proof lies in the projects themselves. Tampa Bypass Canal, the flood that ate the ground. When the Tampa Bypass Canal first appeared on blueprints in the 1960s, it was sold as an act of salvation, a glittering promise to protect the booming city of Tampa and its neighbors from the destructive floods of the Hillsborough River. Stretching roughly 14 miles, the canal carved its way from the city's north to Tampa Bay like a man-made artery, hailed as a marvel of modern flood control. But as Florida has learned time and again, when humans carve through the Earth's veins, they don't just redirect water, they rewrite the balance of an entire ecosystem. During its construction, engineers unknowingly punctured the Floridan aquifer, one of the largest and most delicate groundwater systems in the world. That breach, recorded in geological reports and public archives, meant the canal now served as an open wound between surface water and the porous limestone below. What should have been a flood control barrier became a dissolving machine. Every surge of rain, every seasonal discharge sent torrents of water directly into the aquifer, eroding the stone that once held Tampa's foundation steady. Then came the second twist. The canal, initially designed to divert floods, was later repurposed as a source of drinking water. Water managers began pumping millions of gallons daily from and into the canal, creating violent pressure shifts in the aquifer. The underground limestone, already fractured by decades of stress, responded like brittle glass. Cavities expanded, sediment slipped, and the ground began to sag. Each rainfall became a test of how much more the weakened crust could take before collapsing. By 2016, the controversy had turned into a courtroom battle. Environmental groups fought a plan to pump nearly 4 million gallons a day from the Morris Bridge sink, part of the same interconnected aquifer system. Their fear was simple but chilling. That extraction would trigger new sinkholes or drain nearby wells dry. Local newspapers reported residents discovering cracks in foundations, buckled driveways, and mysterious depressions blooming across Hillsborough County. Officials called them incidents. Homeowners called them holes where the government used to be. Today, the Tampa Bypass Canal stands as a warning disguised as infrastructure. Once praised as the floodway that saved a city, it now whispers of a deeper disaster. The quiet unraveling of Florida's limestone heart. The canal didn't just breach rock, it breached trust. Every hollow beneath Tampa is a reminder that the state's grand water management experiment may have traded one flood for another, a slow, invisible flood of sinking ground. Aging pipes, sinking city. Beneath New York's glittering skyline runs a hidden labyrinth, not of subways or tunnels, but of pipes older than the Empire State Building itself. The city's water and sewer system is a century past its prime. More than 60% of its pipes were laid before World War I. According to the analysis team Mosaic NY's aging water infrastructure, New York loses an estimated 155 million gallons of treated water every single day, enough to fill nearly 200 Olympic pools, simply vanishing through leaks in corroded iron and clay. It's water that taxpayers already paid for, now disappearing into the cracks of a city literally eroding from within. What happens to that water? It doesn't vanish, it moves. It seeps through joints, flows beneath streets, and gnaws at the soft fill soils below. Over decades, those microscopic leaks carve voids the way rivers carve canyons. When the soil under a sidewalk or avenue finally gives way, the city doesn't just face a plumbing problem, it faces gravity itself. That's why Balkan Sewer and Water Main Service, one of the oldest plumbing outfits in New York, now logs sinkhole-like depressions across the boroughs, linking them to the same trifecta: aging pipes, heavier rainfall, and a fluctuating water table. Long Island mirrors the crisis with its own quiet collapses. In Lido Beach and Baldwin, 2023 brought sudden sinkholes blamed on pipe failures, underground leaks that slowly washed out the supporting earth until the ground itself folded. Residents awoke to cracked driveways, sagging lawns, and the smell of sewage leaking into storm drains. Environmental groups like Citizens Campaign for the Environment warned that wastewater seeping from these ruptures threatens local streams and aquifers, a creeping contamination no one can see until it's too late. Each leak becomes a feedback loop of destruction. Water escapes, soil weakens, the pipe shifts, the break widens, and the next rainstorm finishes the job. Meanwhile, City Hall has promised green infrastructure upgrades, but the budget delays and bureaucratic band-aids only deepen the wound. Streets buckle, basement walls crack, and engineers patch one section while 3 more fail somewhere else. New York's once proud network of pipes has turned into a subterranean minefield, an aging circulatory system bleeding from 1,000 unseen cuts. Every leak, every sagging curb, every orange cone marking temporary repair is a symptom of decay decades in the making. For a city that prides itself on never sleeping, the ground beneath it may be the first to collapse from sheer exhaustion. Riverside Park, the green ground giving way. Few places in Manhattan feel as peaceful as Riverside Park, a stretch of green overlooking the Hudson where joggers, parents, and musicians all share the same breeze. But beneath that calm beauty lies a hidden instability, a quiet reminder that even the city's green lungs can suffocate from within. The park, much of which was built atop artificial landfill over 70 years ago, was a product of New York's golden age of expansion, when the city poured its excess earth and rubble along the river to create more land for beauty's sake. Yet what was meant to symbolize growth has over decades become a slow-motion collapse. The problem begins with the ground itself. The landfill beneath Riverside Park is not uniform bedrock, but a patchwork of old fill, sand, gravel, brick, even ash, materials that shift, compress, and dissolve over time. During storms, torrents of rainwater rush down from Broadway and Riverside Drive, overwhelming the park's drainage lines, which date back to the 1930s. These pipes were never meant for the cloudbursts of the modern climate. When they clog with leaves, roots, and debris, water seeks new paths, and those paths often lead straight through the park's fragile subsoil. Each rainfall becomes an excavation project, carving narrow channels through the earth until the surface slumps. The Riverside Park Conservancy has quietly admitted this uncomfortable truth. Sinkholes in the park are not flukes, but symptoms of systemic decay. In their report, New Special Services Crew Tackles Riverside Park Sinkholes, they cite the dual culprits, aging drainage systems and unstable fill soil as the twin engines of collapse. The city now maintains a permanent sinkhole response crew, whose daily routine involves filling depressions, regrading lawns, and reopening flooded walkways. It's a cycle as predictable as the tides. After heavy rain, the symptoms are easy to spot. Water pooling on pathways, bubbling soil, and the faint sag in what used to be flat ground. Some sinkholes are small enough to patch overnight. Others are deep enough to close entire sections for weeks. The New York Post reported sinkhole-like depressions opening between picnic lawns and river trails, potholes in paradise. Every fix costs money, reshaping the park again and again until the landscape itself feels transient, a green mask constantly stitched back together. Riverside Park was once proof that human engineering could coexist with nature. Today it stands as an ironic monument to that hubris. The city celebrated what bloomed above ground, but ignored what rotted beneath. The park still offers beauty, yes, but it's the kind of beauty that trembles, a facade stretched over a body, slowly giving way. Water Tunnel, number 3. The hidden risk beneath Manhattan. Half a century ago, New York City dreamed of conquering water, and it began drilling deep into its own bones to do it. Water Tunnel number 3, launched in 1970, was meant to be an engineering triumph. 60 miles of pressurized arteries running nearly 150 meters underground, connecting reservoirs in the Catskills to the beating heart of the city. Its mission was noble, to relieve pressure on the aging Tunnels 1 and 2, built before World War I, and to ensure that New Yorkers would never again face a drought or contamination crisis. But as decades passed, the promise of control turned into a quiet geological gamble. To carve the tunnel, engineers had to drill and blast through layers of Manhattan schist, siltstone, and groundwater-bearing rock. Every shaft, some as deep as 50 stories, cut through multiple aquifers. Each cut demanded dewatering, the constant pumping out of groundwater to keep the tunnel dry enough for construction. According to contractor Keller North America, workers encountered excessive groundwater movement at 2 major shafts, forcing emergency permeation grouting to stabilize the soil and reduce water seepage. That phrase, excessive groundwater movement, is the kind of technical understatement that geologists translate as the ground is alive. The danger lies in what happens after the machines stop. When groundwater is drained or redirected, the pressure that supports the surrounding rock changes. Cavities can open, and the delicate balance between saturated and dry zones shifts. If even a minor leak occurs along the tunnel lining, water can infiltrate, dissolving minerals and carrying away fine soil particles. The first step towards sinkhole formation, above ground the weight of roads, rail lines, and high-rises exerts constant force. Once the bedrock fractures or softens beneath that load, subsidence begins invisibly, spreading like a bruise through the city's underbelly. No catastrophic collapse has been linked directly to Water Tunnel number 3, yet. But the warning signs echo through every project report. Fluctuating aquifers, unpredictable water flows, unexplained ground shifts. Each delay and budget cut increases the tunnel's vulnerability, stretching construction across generations. As the New York League of Conservation voters noted, deferred completion introduces long-term maintenance challenges. In simpler words, the longer you dig, the more the earth remembers. Water Tunnel number 3 remains both an engineering marvel and a ticking timepiece buried beneath Manhattan's foundations. It embodies the American instinct to master nature with steel and calculation, but water doesn't forget, and neither does rock. In chasing a perfect water system, New York may have carved not just a tunnel, but a fault line between ambition and humility. Urban drainage and groundwater diversion. Florida's silent erosion. Florida's cities were built on a geological illusion, the idea that water could be managed, diverted, and drained without consequence. But beneath the pastel suburbs and palm-lined boulevards lies one of the most delicate landscapes on Earth, a vast network of karst limestone riddled with hidden chambers and underground rivers. The U.S. Geological Survey warned decades ago in its report, Sinkholes, West Central Florida, that the development of groundwater and land resources directly stimulates new sinkhole formation. Yet that warning was ignored as cities paved over wetlands, rechanneled rainfall, and built drainage canals as if the ground itself were indestructible. Urbanization has turned the natural hydrologic balance upside down. Impermeable surfaces, asphalt, roofs, parking lots prevent rain from soaking gently into the soil. Instead, stormwater is funneled through drains and culverts toward retention ponds, or canals often dug right into karst zones. When those artificial channels pour large, marked volumes of runoff into fractured limestone, the results are catastrophic but invisible. The rock dissolves from within. Each storm forces water deeper into existing cracks, widening them until the surface loses its footing. Add aggressive groundwater pumping for agriculture and drinking water, which lowers the aquifer's natural pressure, and the result is a dangerous hydraulic seesaw. When the rains return, the softened rock can no longer bear the weight above it. The consequences have been both spectacular and terrifying. In 2016, a sinkhole at a phosphate facility in Mulberry, Florida, swallowed 215 million gallons of toxic wastewater from a phosphogypsum stack, draining it straight into the Floridan aquifer. The pit opened overnight, described by Tampa Bay Times as a direct conduit between industry and drinking water. Elsewhere, suburban neighborhoods across the Tampa Bay region have watched lawns crater, trees tilt, and roads suddenly collapse after heavy rains. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection acknowledges that diversion of rainwater into unprotected karst zones accelerates sinkhole activity, yet permitting continues and developers still carve new drainage paths through vulnerable ground. In Tampa Bay, a USGS hydrological assessment found that urban runoff systems and groundwater extraction have altered the delicate pressure gradients linking the bay to the aquifer below. The once stable sponge now behaves like a lung, inhaling stormwater, exhaling collapse. Engineers call it subsidence. Homeowners call it terror. Florida's grand experiment in water control, the idea that rain can be neatly redirected and the ground will simply hold, has failed in slow motion. Each culvert, canal, and pump was meant to keep people dry. Instead, they've made the earth itself hollow. The Sunshine State's foundations are dissolving, one storm drain at a time. St. Johns River District, the policy that sank itself. Florida's St. Johns River Water Management District was founded on an elegant principle. Keep the groundwater high and the land will hold. The idea was simple hydrology turned into law. As long as aquifers stay full, the pressure beneath the limestone remains strong enough to prevent collapse. It was meant to be Florida's safeguard against the state's oldest enemy, the sinkhole. The district's guidelines explicitly warn, maintain groundwater levels to prevent sinkhole formation. Yet the reality beneath the Sunshine State is far less obedient than the policy written on paper. The problem isn't the science, it's the people. Across the district's vast jurisdiction, thousands of private, agricultural, and industrial wells pump water far beyond permitted limits. Some operate without inspection, others with outdated meters, or none at all. Each unauthorized withdrawal lowers the aquifer just a little more. When the water pressure drops, Floridan limestone loses its buoyant support, its lift. Suddenly the bedrock isn't holding the earth up anymore. It's sagging, crumbling, dissolving. Then the rainy season comes. Torrents of surface water meant to replenish the aquifer slowly now pour into the weakened layers through fractures widened by years of overpumping. The very thing that's supposed to restore balance ends up finishing the job of destruction. Water rushes into the cavities, eating away the limestone's edges and washing out the sediments that once filled the voids. What begins as a harmless puddle can turn into a sinkhole overnight, taking driveways, citrus groves, and backyards with it. In theory, St. Johns River District enforces pumping caps and monitors usage with remote sensors. In practice, the system depends on self-reporting and voluntary compliance. A polite way of saying it runs on trust. and trust is a poor foundation for geology. In areas where oversight is weakest, the agricultural belts of Lake, Marion, and Volusia counties, small-scale collapses and foundation cracks have become common after heavy rains. Each one tells the same story. Water drained too fast. The rock dissolved too soon. The soil fell too far. No one claims the policy itself caused the sinkholes, but its failure to function has certainly invited them. What was meant to protect the ground beneath Florida has, through neglect, made it fragile. When surface runoff invades the empty spaces left by vanishing groundwater, contamination follows, mixing pesticides, fertilizers, and sewage into the state's main aquifer. It's a cruel irony. A protection plan that leaves both the earth and the water more exposed. Florida once boasted that it could regulate the invisible, the silent tides beneath its soil. But when regulation turns to rhetoric and enforcement dissolves like limestone, nature stops negotiating. Each new sinkhole across the St. Johns district isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a verdict, a reminder that words without weight can't hold the earth together. The cost beneath our feet. A sinkhole isn't just a hole in the ground, it's the earth speaking back, the slow revenge of geology against blind ambition. For decades, American planners believed they could outsmart nature with canals, tunnels, and storm drains, engineering triumphs that would keep cities dry and safe. Yet today, New York and Florida stand as cautionary tales. Streets cracking open, homes leaning, budgets bleeding dry on emergency repairs. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that sinkholes already cost the nation at least $300 million every year. A bill written in asphalt and anxiety. If transparency and accountability remain buried, every neighborhood could be next. So demand the truth. Ask your officials to release sinkhole maps, disclose repair funds, and audit every flood control project ever approved. Because this isn't about erosion. It's about responsibility. The ground is shifting, and silence won't hold it steady.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our daily content. Now feel free to check out some of the newest and best videos currently shown on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.